And I'm going to give you a little assignment. Won't be doing until Friday. Hopefully, if we get finished on time, you guys can browse some of the websites I'm going to ask you to look at, and you can have a head start on the assignment. Okay. So false assumptions about children's art. I personally found this chapter a little hoity-toity. Like, children's art can only be seen in this specific lens. So we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to share my perspective on some things too. Like, children's art can't be predetermined outcome, right? So we'll talk about some of those things. But false assumptions, they talked about that people think children's art develops in a certain way or should be a certain way, and we need to look at it through a different perspective. Artistic ability unfolds naturally, so it's best to let them follow their own inclinations. It's not totally natural. If you put a child in an environment with art supplies, they're not going to learn every technique and build an artistic repertoire on their own. There has to be some kind of a guide there. There also has to be the materials. If a child is left to play in the woods, are they going to develop some artistic ability? Probably not. We have to be a guide there, and that's what it was saying. There is kind of a natural progression, though, so we have to let that shine out. Are some people naturally more artistic than others? Yeah. So we can't make everyone a Picasso, but we can give them the space and the guidance to help them grow that on their own pace. Art is emotional rather than cognitive. Art is a combination of the two things. It is emotional and cognitive. So there's a thinking process, there's a feeling process. It all comes together to make art. Some people think that art is just feeling. Just do it, right? Don't think about it, just do it. I am not a touchy-feely artistic person, so if you tell me to just do it, I'm going to freak out a little bit. Kids are the same way. We all have a spectrum of the way we interact with things, so I remember there's some thinking to go along and help scaffold that for our kids. Any sensory experience is art experience. So some people would say that water table is artistic experience because it's sensory, because we're experiencing the world. We're intaking some sort of sensory input and processing it. This chapter says that is not art. I would agree, that is not art. That's sensory, that's cognitive work, but it's not art. We're not creating anything artistic from it. If they're drawing on the sand table, could that be art combined with sensory? Yeah. So there's some, just some misconceptions that people have about art. That's what it's trying to dispel. Children need to produce artwork in solitude, so it's not copied. We've already learned that interaction is huge for kids, right? That social, learning from others, maybe even copying at first before they get the confidence to move on their own. And the purpose of school art projects is to celebrate holidays or make gifts. Probably not the best purpose we could think of. Is that a place we can integrate it, though, and get away with some art things? Absolutely, but we need to remember that the purpose is to expose kids to art and help them build their art skill, art talent, art abilities. And we can celebrate holidays and make gifts, but that's not the purpose. Other people see it that way. All right, so is it art? These things are not art, they said. Using crafts to construct something. So if you give them the pieces of snowman, and you put an example on the board, and you tell them to make the snowman, that's not considered art, that's a craft, because it's just putting something together. It's more construction. Using food as art, I'm going to argue with this one. So they said using food as art is not art. I think it can be art. I think that if you give them enough open space, you're painting macaroni or painting with pudding on a canvas and it dries and it's art. If it's open, it's creative, and the kids are using different techniques to create that art, I think it's still art. When it comes to an assembly task, you have an example, they're supposed to replicate that. That isn't art. But if you can make it open-ended enough to make it art, if you use food, and that's fun for kids, right? See, and it's cheap for us. You don't have to buy beans, you can buy macaroni. Copying work. A lot of kids love to trace. They just love to take paper and put it down and trace it because they get a lot of positive feedback from that, right? That's so cool, that's so awesome. Not art. Just copying is not art. If they use a work as inspiration, that could be considered art. So these things they said were art. Creative problem solving, so if they have to write a book, make a mobile, mix paints to make some sort of color that they're looking for. Anything that makes them think and problem solve to complete the task, if it's an art task, it's art. If you give them all the materials for a snowman, and you say make a snowman, but you don't cut it out and show them an example, could that be considered art? Yeah. So responses to something, comparing, contrasting, or discussing postcards or photographs or paintings, that's art. We're thinking about the world through an artistic lens. Books are also considered in that. You can look at the pictures in books. You guys see children's books, right? We all love children's books. Have you seen the art in those things? Like some days I just want to look at all the paintings because they're so gorgeous. Kids can use their literature to help expose kids to art. And art centers. So an experiment with colors, or if they're doing like a snowman project, or maybe painting with that pudding. I know it said it wasn't art, but we agreed that if you give them the right leeway, it is. So as long as they're working to achieve some sort of goal, it's not totally predetermined. Not everyone's snowman has to look like this. Not everyone's mixing to get this color brown. We can create art in our centers. All right, everybody stand up and stretch. Don't die on me. I just gotta get through this and then you'll have an activity, I promise, right? Just do whatever you want. Okay, you can sit down when you're ready.
I have a question.
Yep.
If you don't want, or like, if we're not supposed to give an example, like of the snowman, like, what if there's a kid that's like freaking out that he doesn't have an example to
Sit
say?
down and help them. And you might start with the example, right? You can start with the assembly task and then the next time make it open-ended. And with the younger kids, you have to do that a lot. That's where it crosses over for me. Because you've got to provide some scaffolding. You've got to provide some direction. Maybe you just draw an outline of a snowman on the board and kind of show them what a snowman looks like if he's feeling really, several are feeling really frustrated or stressed out about it. And then you might say, everybody look at it really closely and then erase it and then becomes more open-ended again. My third graders struggle with that because especially when you get kids that are older grades, if a teacher along the way has given them every time this is the outcome, this is what it should look like, these are the colors you should use, this is the shape it should be in. They have a hard time with that. Oh, I have to do what? You know? Kind of like you guys do with some of my questions that I've given you, right? Like, you want what? There's no parameters, you just need to answer it. What? So you have to sometimes provide scaffolding, but then kind of pull it back as you go. It's a tough thing to draw. You want to make sure they're comfortable and confident, but you also want to give them that freedom. And they may be a little bit itchy about it. So, yeah, good question. So the things that affect how children express themselves through art. Prior experience. If a kiddo has parents that constantly provide art materials at home, they have colored pencils, they have crayons, they have markers, they have paint, they have oil pastels. Are they going to be really good with using those materials and feel comfortable enough to just create whatever they want? Yeah. So it's kind of that spectrum of ability too. You think about kids that have a lot of artistic ability and kids that don't. Kids that have a lot of experience are going to be kind of leaps and bounds ahead. So you've got to provide some flexibility in your art projects to allow those kids to shine, but give the others the experience they don't have maybe. Cultural opportunities. If their culture includes a lot of art. Oops, sorry. They're just going to have a lot more exposure. They're going to have a lot more ideas. So we've got to try to build that for the kids that don't have it, but let the kids that have it, maybe they can share with the class something that they've experienced from their culture. Family discipline. If you're a family, they're art teachers. You're probably going to be pretty good at art, right? Just because you've had exposure. If your mom or dad is a teacher and you've helped them make bulletin boards, or you've just been there when they're being creative, you might have a few more ideas of how to use materials. And then this one breaks down to who you are. What are your skills? How well are you with your fine and gross motor skills? How easily can you think about visual spatial things? I don't like that term, mental capacity, but I pulled these from the text. So mental capacity just means cognitive ability to think through things, problem solving, those kinds of things. Kids that have great in any or all areas are going to do better at art. Things that, or kids that struggle a little bit are going to need your help. Sorry guys, I was over there today. Development of principles in children's art. So how does children's art develop? Children definitely think about art in different ways than adults, thank goodness. Because if they did, we'd all be stuck in a box. So they come at art differently. We need to make sure we're meeting them where they are. They're very creative. Let them be open. Let them come up with ideas. Help them foster that. And growth can't be forced. There are sequential stages. You saw those scribbling stages. We're going to go through those later. That happens in a real order. You can't have a kid jump from absolutely non-representational scribbling to representational houses, right? They have to walk through those stages. And children learn to express themselves by interacting with their environment, so you have to give them the space and the time and the materials. Like we said earlier, children they do develop along a developmental curve, but it's not natural. It needs some support, and we can help kids get farther than they thought they might, than they definitely would on their own. Knowledge about the arts is developed through experience. Music, looking at art, looking at materials, exploring, trying things out, just having a big art center where there's junk they can use. Is that in your eyes, guys? Meeting artists, watching them work. Sometimes this isn't very feasible, right? For some of our schools that are lower funded, but can you find videos? The resources available to us to let kids watch artists and watch them work. It's just immense right now. Eric Carle is one of my favorite children's artists and authors, just because he always does such an awesome job in his videos of drawing kids into his process. And I've seen a ton of teachers use his kind of methods to create some sort of art project. If kids are experiencing what other artists do, they really start to take ownership and feel like, no, I can do that. That's totally feasible when I see what was done, what are the steps that artist took to get there. Looking at artworks of art and discussing them. At our level, that just might be talking about the colors, right? Or the shapes. Or what do you see in this? At a higher level, there are lots of things to talk about, lots of art vocabulary to introduce. Today we're going to focus on using artifacts to develop knowledge about the arts. And I told you I would be quick, so you have time. Our class website, if you have a device, you can go there. If not, I'll go there and I'll show you what we have. You notice in the text maybe that there was a page with museum websites. Yeah? We're going to do a museum website experience. Can't all take our kids on a field trip. We just can't. Especially to museums. If you're lucky enough your school and you live around here, you might take your kids to Kansas City once in their whole 6 years at elementary school. So museums have created great online resources to allow the public, teachers and students and adults and whomever, to experience their resources. So at the Visit to the Museum link, before I start that real fast, play resources and activities. I have officially uploaded all your play resources in this PDF file. So if you want to jump on, you can check out what other people did if you're curious. And you can definitely use that later in your classroom. So Visit to the Museum. Along the side here are links to a ton of museums. And it jumps down there. Smithsonian probably has the best website. This is a word of information for you, because there are just a ton to explore. For your assignment, I need to evaluate at least 2 websites. You can do more if you want. The questions are listed in Canvas, but I also put them here so we can talk about them, so in case anyone has any questions. The first question wants you to look at any child-friendly content or resources that are available. Any resources specifically for teachers? Any resources specifically for families? Is it easy to navigate, that's a big deal. Because if you're hunting and you can't find something, maybe you assign it to your kids on a one-to-one initiative on an iPad, go explore this on this museum's website. If it's not easy to navigate, it's not going to work. To what extent does it provide information or resources that are creative and child-friendly? So just in terms of child-friendly things to do, could your kids get on there and do something? And what are the other ways, I added this one, that you would use the site to enhance children's art experiences in your classroom? So there's got to be a way, even if it's a stinky site that's hard to navigate, that has no extra resources, how could you find a way to use it? Let's pretend it's in your curriculum that you have to visit this museum virtually, okay? Any questions about it? Last thing I want you to do is compare and contrast. Which site is more valuable and why? So you should include the websites you visited in the museum. You can number them or you can write a paragraph. It doesn't matter to me as long as you address all the questions, and that is due Friday. Yes. Makes my life easier if everything's due at 8 o'clock because after class I can go downstairs and grade. And I can talk to people that are missing it instead of waiting until over the weekend. And yeah. Any questions? That's really all I have today. Children's art's going to be quick and dirty. We're going to do today. We're going to do Wednesday. I'm going to assign you an art activity. And that'll be it for chapter 3. So you guys can work, you can stay, you can go. I know. I'll post it. That's okay. If I didn't get you checked in, will you check with me if you didn't get checked in this morning? Before you leave, I'll just stand over here. I can make this. Okay. So yes, I got you. That's why you're right there. Thank you. Sure. If you know an extra one that's not on there, that's fine too.
It's like a chart.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Like a hand tester.
Like that. Owen's okay. It's close enough. If you already found the one, I don't want you. It's a little bit different. It's mostly the same. Basically, the first 2 chapters were turned into first 3 chapters were turned into 2 chapters in the new book. So actually, you're going to be on chapter 4 now. So then. I have this next one. The content's very similar. The chapter numbers have just changed. The foundations, yeah. Well, I would look at my PowerPoints on Canvas for that course and just read through it and find those things. Yeah. 0 to 3 is usually just in daycare. Sometimes they're in preschool at 3, but not always. So 0 to 3, they either stay home with their parents or they go to daycare sites where they just play and take care of them. And earlier. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking, yeah. No problem. So they pretend to be a teacher, they're pretending that they're in charge of the class. What if they were in charge of the class? Or they're playing as if they're Mrs. Bartlow. Does that make sense? So they're just pretending to be something else. That's all that means. Yeah, it just means that the attitude is that they're putting themselves in someone else's places. Yeah. Or pretending to be a chef, or pretending to be a zookeeper or something. Imagining what a cook might say. So, what if I'm a cook? What would I say? And as if, like freaking out. So he's actually doing the things he knows a cook would say. So what is it? Is if they have to think about it and come up with something that they don't know for sure. What if a cook said this? This is if they're acting as if they're someone else, that they know what that person does. Yeah. So they're both imagining, but this one is a little more open-ended because they're not quite sure what that person might do, so they have to come up with it. And this one is, they know that a cook cooks and stirs and does things, so they're gonna act that out. Does that make sense a little bit?
So I was wondering, can I ask about this?
Yeah.
Every Monday.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.